Gildan Media presents Your Coach in a Box, affordable, life-changing audio programs.
I hear you. Repair communication breakdowns, negotiate successfully, and build consensus in 3 simple steps. By Donny Ebenstein. Note to readers. This book comprises multiple dialogues and examples in which the concepts are applied to specific situations. While the stories come from real-life experiences, they have all been modified. All names and identifying details have been changed to preserve people's privacy, and most cases reflect amalgams of various individuals' similar experiences. Introduction: From Conflict to Consensus. In the 3 years I spent acquiring my degree from Harvard Law School, I learned that I actually didn't want to be a lawyer. Instead of being a gladiator on behalf of my clients, I wanted to help people listen to the other side, communicate more effectively, and resolve their conflicts amicably. If I were successful, they would learn and grow from their difficult situations, avoiding conflict in the future. Shortly after my graduation, I got the chance of a lifetime, winning a fellowship to intern at a conflict resolution center sponsored by the Supreme Court of Costa Rica. I had been in Costa Rica for less than a week, living in the capital of San Jose. It was Sunday night when I got a phone call from Gabriela, the training director. A presenter who was scheduled to accompany her on a trip to the South suddenly had to cancel for personal reasons. The team, she explained, was now 1 presenter short. Could I go in his place? A combination of excitement and terror filled me. I was going to have a chance to teach people about the power of conflict resolution. But was I really ready to do that, in a foreign country and speaking a foreign language? What if I flopped? Of course I'll go, I said. The presentation was taking place in Sierpe, a small tropical town in swamplands near the Pacific coast. The weather was hot, humid, and extremely uncomfortable, and I cursed my American button-down shirt, necktie, and wool dress pants. My stomach was in agony from drinking the water that my American stomach couldn't handle. Sweating and miserable, I made my way over to where the presentation would take place, a concrete floor with 3 grass walls and a grass roof. Our hosts had set up an overhead projector and some 60 chairs for the audience, but no microphone. The acoustics were terrible. To be heard, I almost had to yell. Despite these obstacles, the presentation was a huge success, flawed Spanish and all. My confidence soared, and I went on to do several more presentations, as well as actual mediations in other cities and in San Jose. Success built on itself, and I returned from Costa Rica determined to build a career in this field. Since then, over the past 17 years, I have been fortunate to be able to turn my passion into a profession. As I think about how my career began with that presentation, 2 lessons come to mind. First, I learned that when I shared a message and taught people skills that I truly believed in, I could be effective in virtually any setting. I have worked successfully as a trainer, mediator, facilitator, consultant, curriculum designer, and coach. I've done so with many different types of populations: senior business executives, teachers, psychologists, army officers, hedge fund managers, social workers, police officers, salespeople, attorneys, school administrators, bankers, judges, and more. I have worked all around the world, including in Latin America, the Middle East, Australia, China, Japan, and throughout Europe. Second, I realized that the need to answer some basic questions is nearly universal. How can I communicate more effectively? How can I build and improve relationships? How can I resolve conflicts? No matter where people worked or what they did for a living, these were the questions that kept surfacing. The desire for help in these areas is both intense and widespread, and when presented with tools that will help, people respond. I've written this book to help people communicate more effectively, particularly in their most stuck, conflict-ridden situations. Becoming your own coach. My first encounter with conflict resolution came while still a law student, mediating in the local small claims court. Small claims cases are disputes where the dollar amounts are typically low, a few $100s, but the emotions are high. They might involve an unhappy customer, an unpaid contractor, feuding neighbors, or even quarrels between family members. The goal of small claims mediation is to help the parties resolve their dispute amicably without having to go before a judge. There are many benefits to settling a dispute rather than receiving a judgment, including better enforcement of the agreement, saving time, protecting one's reputation, and improving relationships, which can be especially important between neighbors or family members. I volunteered to become trained as a mediator. In the 32-hour mediation course, we learned many different skills, including how to build rapport with the parties, how to ask questions, how to listen effectively, and how to show empathy. As I began mediating actual cases, I was amazed to see how this process unlocked what appeared to be intractable conflicts, assisting the parties in reaching a mutually acceptable resolution. I asked myself, why is mediation effective? If it was possible to settle the case all along, why didn't it settle before? And if it was not possible previously, what has the mediator done to change that? Over time, I came to realize that the mediator played an essential role in fostering mutual understanding. A mediator can listen to each side's perspective, understand and validate that perspective, and simultaneously help each party listen to and understand the other side's perspective. The mediator bridges the gaps in understanding between parties. It is this fostering of mutual understanding, in turn, that unlocks the situation and opens up new possibilities for the parties to communicate with one another and to ultimately think creatively about possible solutions that had not been considered before. But it's not always practical to call in a mediator. Whether your stuck situation is with a colleague, a subordinate, your manager, an important client, or anyone else, you might not have the luxury of calling in a skilled and neutral outsider to bridge the gaps in understanding. And in those cases, you need to help yourself by becoming your own coach, your own outside neutral party. Unilaterally, you can bridge the gaps in perspective, the way a mediator would, and harness the power of mediation to get unstuck all by yourself. This doesn't mean giving in, and it doesn't mean giving up. It just means stepping outside your perspective and looking at your situation from a neutral vantage point. This book provides you with strategies and techniques to do just that. Chapter 1 describes the problem of being stuck. We all encounter situations where we don't know how to make things better, making us feel trapped and helpless. The first step is to recognize that you have the power to change things by behaving differently yourself. Even when things seem hopeless, the dynamics of an interpersonal interaction can be changed just by one of the parties doing something differently. In order to interact differently with your counterparty, you need to find a way to think differently. Looking for new words to say isn't the answer. You need to learn to shift your perspective and flex your mind to create new possibilities in how you interact with the other side. This is the subject of Chapter 2. Flexing one's mind, however, is no small feat. Chapter 3 describes the barriers to engaging in this process that can get you stuck, and it provides you with some suggestions for how to get past these challenges. We've all heard similar advice before. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. But to really get it, to truly get unstuck, you need to do more than put yourself in the other person's place. Rather, you need to build your capacity to see different perspectives at the same time. A concrete way of visualizing what I am advocating occurred to me one evening while I was sitting in my apartment. I live on the 4th floor of a 6-floor apartment building. As anyone who has lived in an apartment knows, noise travels from units above to units below. In our line of apartments, all of the residents are families with small children, and we all make plenty of noise. On this particular evening, my upstairs neighbors were being quite loud. Their kids were running around, throwing toys, banging, and generally making a huge ruckus. I was becoming quite frustrated and was tempted to go upstairs to complain and say, "You need to keep your kids quieter and be sensitive to your downstairs neighbors." But I paused. Just then I heard a loud crash from my kids' room, where a soccer game was in progress. I considered how we sounded to my downstairs neighbors. I'm sure the ruckus that my children were making was just as disturbing to the family that lives under us. If they were to come upstairs and complain, I would probably want to say something like, "Look, kids are noisy, and there is not much that can be done. This is the reality of apartment living." This experience was an eye-opener for me. I had a moment of clarity where I realized that there were two legitimate perspectives to this situation, the upstairs perspective and the downstairs perspective. And this is true in any stuck situation. There are multiple justifiable perspectives, different yet valid ways to look at what is going on. The ability to see both perspectives at the same time helped me to successfully manage my frustration. In this case, it was simple, since I was simultaneously living the experience of both an upstairs and downstairs neighbor, both the victim and the perpetrator of noisemaking. It was therefore much easier to flex my mind and view the noise coming from upstairs through the eye of the upstairs neighbor, instead of just being annoyed by the thumping from above. It's not that it wasn't noisy. Rather, I could understand that they were doing their best, just as I was doing mine. 3 chapters, 4, 5, and 6, together offer a framework for how to shift perspective without losing your own story. That is, how to apply the upstairs-downstairs paradigm to your own stuck situations. There are 3 different ways of shifting perspective that I recommend, all of which can be used to gain a bird's-eye view of your case. They include telling the other side's story, Chapter 4, learning to see yourself as others see you, Chapter 5, and recognizing how your dynamic is affected by the system or structures in place, rather than just by the personalities involved, Chapter 6. Using examples and mock dialogues, each of these chapters models how you can achieve the respective shift in thinking. They also provide you with concrete pointers on how you can have a conversation with the other side in the wake of that shift. Most of the time, people become stuck in their own perspective. It's deceptively easy to believe that you've understood another point of view when you've actually failed to understand the other issues at hand. These 3 chapters will help you make sure that you have successfully flexed your mind, that you really do get it. However, sometimes people can have the reverse problem. They become lost in the other side's perspective. Rather than seeing both the upstairs and downstairs positions at the same time, they adopt the other side's narrative in lieu of their own story. Whether this is a common problem for you or merely an occasional challenge, Chapter 7 tackles the question of how to flex your mind without losing your own narrative. By this point in the book, you'll have mastered the skill of telling the upstairs and downstairs stories at the same time, and you'll be able to prepare accordingly. Once you've acquired these skills, you need to apply what you have learned to real life. When you are trying to pinpoint what is getting you stuck and how these various shifts can help you get unstuck in your particular case, it can be useful to engage in role-playing. In Chapter 8, I define role-playing and highlight the ways it can help you get unstuck. Role-playing can be useful as a diagnostic tool, and it is also essential for preparing you for future and smoother interactions with your counterparty. Flexing your mind in different ways and role-playing your situation will enable you to generate multiple new options that can open the doors to your stuck situation. Chapter 9 delves into the various possibilities that may emerge. You may flex your mind and come up with creative options for making things better. Alternatively, after seeing things differently, you may decide that the status quo works for you and simply tweak it for your own comfort. In some extreme situations, you may decide that leaving the situation is what's best for you. After having flexed your mind, any of these options leads to empowerment, as you will have undergone a process through which you have made a conscious, thorough, and informed decision about what works best for you. Getting stuck is a fact of life. Difficult situations and difficult people are all around us, and no one, not even the most skilled communicator, can avoid getting stuck 100% of the time. While you can't control other people, you can control your own behavior. The good news is that the methods outlined in this book will help you alter your situation unilaterally. My hope is that this book will help you to bring out the best version of yourself so that you can cope more skillfully with the difficult situations you will inevitably encounter. Chapter 1. Change Yourself. Going from stuck to unstuck. Harriet opened the conversation by saying, "Look, we were quite disappointed with the workshop, and I think this is feedback you need to take seriously." As Harriet detailed her dissatisfaction with the program, John, who managed client relationships for his firm, was fuming inside. All of her criticisms, all of them, were things he had warned her about ahead of time. She said, "John, the session was too short." John steamed, recalling that when he had inquired about running a longer session, Harriet had said they could not give the topic more time. Harriet continued saying, "You know, the junior staff was intimidated and didn't want to participate." When John had asked about dividing the group according to seniority, she told him that her marching orders were to keep the junior and senior staff together. And to make matters worse, she hadn't let John interact with any of her senior managers one-on-one. She had insisted on being part of every phone call and meeting. This meant that John had no opportunity to sidestep Harriet. Her meddling in the design of the workshop had made things much harder and had negatively affected the final outcome. After delivering all of the negative feedback, Harriet paused, obviously giving John a chance to respond. He wanted to speak up, but he was afraid of antagonizing his client. Now what? John was stuck. John's situation is one we can all relate to. You find yourself in a dynamic with someone important to you, a client, a manager, a colleague, a family member, where you don't know what to say or do. You may be stumped as to how to respond, afraid of sounding too aggressive, or fearful that being honest will make things worse. The good news is that you are not alone, and that there is something you can do to get unstuck. Defining stuck situations. Being stuck in this context is not like being stuck in the mud, unable to move. It's more like being caught in a maze, running in circles, where all of your motion somehow doesn't lead to progress. You just don't know how to respond in a constructive fashion. Not only do you not see how you can make it better, your attempts to make it better just make it worse. You have the feeling that there is simply nothing that could make this situation go differently. Consider the following example. I was at a party at a friend's house chatting with a woman I had just met. Her name was Wendy, and she asked me what I did for a living. When I told her that I coach people on how to communicate, collaborate, and negotiate more effectively in their most challenging situations, Wendy proceeded to tell me all about a difficult situation she was having with a colleague at work. Kevin, a peer of hers, would always find a way to avoid working late or on the weekends. He managed to duck most difficult assignments, which somehow ended up on Wendy's desk. In general, Wendy felt he was not doing his fair share of the work, and she was left picking up the slack. She tried to politely raise the topic with Kevin, but got nowhere. Wendy asked me for my advice, and we had the following conversation. Me: what happens when you try to talk to Kevin about sharing the load more evenly? Wendy: it doesn't go well. Me: what does he say? Wendy: he gets defensive. He tells me not to micromanage him and that it's none of my business what time he goes home. Me: how do you respond to that? Wendy: I usually tell him that people perceive him negatively and that it's not good for his reputation to be seen leaving early. Me: and? Wendy: he tells me that he is getting his work done, so there is no problem. Me: is he right? Wendy: yes and no. He is very efficient and does get his work done, but I can also work quickly, and so can other people at the firm. It's not as if people get their work done and then just leave at 5 o'clock. If you can take on more work, you do. It's only Kevin who leaves so early. Me: did you tell him that? Wendy: not in so many words, but I did say that everyone is working hard and everyone wants to go home, and he should think about other people's workloads, not just his own. Me: what about raising the issue with your manager? Wendy: my manager doesn't care. She said that she tries to balance the load among the team, and she does not monitor what time Kevin leaves, as long as he gets his work done. Me: and what do you think about that? Wendy: well, in principle, that makes sense, but it doesn't work in practice. It's not always clear how long something will take, so a project might take 2 hours or it might take 8 hours, and you don't know which until you get deep into it. If something gets done quicker, you can take on more work, and somehow it always seems as if I get the more demanding and time-consuming projects. Me: have you said anything to your manager about how projects are assigned? Wendy: yes, I did. I mean, I said it sort of indirectly, but I did say something. Me: what exactly did you say? Wendy: I asked her how she decided who got which assignment, and she said that there wasn't really any system. She looked at who didn't get any new assignments lately and gave it to them. She didn't seem to appreciate being questioned, so I dropped the subject. Me: were you afraid that she would feel you were attacking her? Wendy: yes, and she tends to get defensive and sometimes even retaliates against people who make trouble. I don't want to be the whiner on the team. Besides, it's not as if I can't get the work done. If I have to work late a few nights, so be it. Me: but it sounds like the situation is making you resentful. Wendy: yes, it is. But I have learned that sometimes you can't beat the office politics. I guess I should just recognize that not everyone is going to be a team player and forget about the whole thing. Wendy was stuck in her situation. She was unhappy with how things were going, but felt helpless to change them. I knew she was stuck because she expressed a strong feeling of resignation. Things she had tried didn't improve the situation, but actually made it worse. She had already called it quits and given up on making things better for herself, even though it clearly bothered her enough that she recounted the whole story to a perfect stranger. In stuck situations, it is natural to give up trying to make it better. As people get more frustrated, they tend to either lash out or withdraw. Sometimes they do both, first lashing out and then withdrawing, disengaging, and ultimately leaving the situation. The costs of Wendy's frustration and her despair that nothing will make things better are not only borne by her. The company also suffers. As Wendy, a productive contributor to her team, becomes unhappy and resentful, her productivity goes down. There is a significant risk that she will leave the company altogether, and the cost of replacing a skilled employee is high. This book was written to address these types of stuck situations. Here are some ways to tell if you are in a stuck situation. Are you dissatisfied with what is happening now? Do you find yourself in a dynamic that repeats itself? Is there a pattern to what is happening? Do you feel powerless to change the situation? Are you clueless as to what to do to make it better? Did the things you've already tried doing to make the situation get better fail or make it worse? Are you resigned to feeling unhappy? Do you find yourself thinking that the other person is the worst person in the world? If so, this book can help you. Fixing it begins with you. While grappling with a stuck situation, the people closest to you are often the ones who make things worse. Why? Because they support you by sympathizing with your feelings, assuring you that it's not your fault, and reinforcing your perception that there is nothing you can do to make things go differently. The supportive friend conversation goes something like this. Wendy: I can't believe I have to work this weekend again. Supportive friend: I know. Wendy: Kevin is such a jerk. He knows just how to maneuver to get out of the toughest assignments. He didn't stay late even one night this week. Supportive friend: and you were working such long hours. Wendy: I know, it's infuriating. Supportive friend: every office has someone like that. There's not much you can do about it. Wendy: why doesn't my manager see it? Supportive friend: she's probably just lazy. She knows you will get everything done, so why make an issue with Kevin? Wendy: and she is on a total power trip. God forbid that anyone should criticize her management or how she runs the team. Supportive friend: I bet she is threatened by you and knows she can't afford to lose you. You are really good at your job. Wendy, well, I'm not going to let people treat me this way. Supportive friend, you should look for a new place to work. Wendy's friend wants to be supportive, but not only is she failing to help Wendy, she is actually hurting her. By simply agreeing with Wendy's story and never challenging it, she is making it easier for Wendy to cling to the notion that there is nothing she can do about this situation. And here is the starting point for our work together in this book. It begins with you. You have the power to shift your most stuck situations. This is a powerful and transformative idea. You can make things better on your own. Just by behaving differently yourself, you can shift your whole dynamic with another person, even when it feels hopeless. And yet, when I tell this to people, they become defensive. Consider the following exchange, which is the continuation of my conversation with Wendy. Me: so, what are you going to do? Wendy: I don't know. I don't think there is much I can do. I know you do coaching and try to help people, but some situations are just not fixable. Me: do you feel this is one of those situations? Wendy: yes. Let's pause here. Wendy is clearly stuck. She has decided the problem is not fixable, and she's given up. She feels that it is hopeless. Based on what she described so far, do you agree? Is her situation hopeless? It is hard to tell, but it is much better to err on the side of hopeful rather than hopeless. We continued as follows. Me: I think the situation may not be hopeless, Wendy, and I think there's a lot you could be doing to make it better. Wendy: what do you mean? Me: I think some of the things you did have contributed to the problem. For example, I don't think you had a constructive conversation with Kevin to talk about this situation. It sounds like you were a bit aggressive in how you raised this topic with him, which made him defensive. It's no surprise, then, that it did not go well. Wendy: what? I can't believe you are saying it's my fault. I'm the one who is working my tail off all weekend. Kevin is the freeloader who goes home at 5 o'clock. Why are you blaming it all on me? What do you think of Wendy's reaction? Did I blame her for the situation? Is this all her fault? Isn't Kevin the one who needs to do things differently? When I tell people that they can change their stuck situations, they often react as Wendy did. They get defensive because they feel they are being blamed. They then seek to prove how they are not at fault and how they can't do anything to change their stuck situation. But hold on a minute. I didn't blame Wendy for Kevin's bad behavior. I pointed out that she could have had a more constructive conversation with Kevin about it. That doesn't make the problem her fault. And here is the good news. If I'm right, and Wendy could have handled the conversation with Kevin differently, then it's possible that she could have elicited a different response from him. It is a wonderful thing to be told that you can change your stuck situation. Wouldn't you want to know that there is something you can do that can make a difference in your dynamic with your manager, colleague, neighbor, spouse, client, or whomever else you struggle with, even if the problem was not one you created? Isn't it better for Wendy if she discovers that she is not limited to sucking it up or finding a new job, but she could actually make things better by changing her own behavior? It's important for me to reiterate that just because you may decide to behave differently does not mean that it's your fault. Fault is a useful concept in a tort lawsuit to show that someone should be held liable to pay damages. But in interpersonal interactions, whether you are at fault doesn't matter in the end. What matters is what can be done to make things better. Fundamentally, the way to get unstuck in your most stuck situations is by first assuming that you can change things by being different yourself. I know people will fight me on this point, and it's not true 100% of the time. There are situations where even if you decide to behave differently, it won't be enough to change things. And in Chapter 9, we will address that issue. But even though there are some relationships that cannot be repaired, most of the time you can change things by doing something different yourself. Overcoming your own despair and adopting a proactive, optimistic stance that you can change things unilaterally is the secret to making a
Sample complete. Ready to continue?